Hi there, Valor family. I thought this might be a good way to communicate my heart and to share plans for fundraising with you, since I'm not sure when I'll be able to be back at school. So briefly, I want to give a little bit of a testimony, and then I'll show you the details, and then I'm sure there'll be others at school that will be able to answer questions. So the reason I have this scripture up on the screen, this is from Daniel 4. This is the story of one of Nebuchadnezzar's dreams, where he dreams about this beautiful tree being cut down. And the interpretation is that Daniel says, if you don't humble yourself before the Lord, he will cut you down. And Nebuchadnezzar, the outcome was he didn't, and he ended up spending 7 years as a beast in a field. And so that's pretty harsh. But what I want to tell you is that back in the spring of 2014, while I was at work, doing consulting work at Mutual of Omaha, in the middle of the day, the Lord just broke in on my day, and I was pretty new at hearing his voice, but I knew that he was sending me to this scripture. And the Lord said to me, Rachel, this is for you too. And he, at that time, told me that I was supposed to step away from work. And at that time, I was, at the high of my career, and things were great, and I was making a lot of money, and Valor was we were still trying to get it started, but there was people involved, and I didn't think that was my role. I thought my role was to help with the provision. And so what the Lord was telling me in this scripture from Daniel 4 was, he was basically saying to me, Rachel, what I'm about to build in Valor is not about you, and it's not about you and your provision. It's about me and my glory. And I knew that then, and I even turned in my resignation to the firm that I was working for. But then in May, my husband had to walk away from his job because of some situations that weren't good for him, and so I had to stay working just to provide for our family. And then he got another job eventually, and I continued to work off and on and be a part of Valor. And so many of you know that. Many of you know, that the last couple of years I've worked very hard. We made some mistakes early on when the Lord called me into this. I just assumed that if he called me into this and he provided the place at Calvary, that there would just be the provision and it would be easy. And that is not how it's been. In that now, as I've learned about God more, I recognize he's not about outcomes. He's about the journey that we're on with him. And so it was more about, all along, about me and everyone involved, about our hearts and our positioning of our hearts to him and his plans. And so things have been really hard at times. And even though I have always remembered this day in the spring of 2014 where the Lord broke in and showed this to me, I've always known that this was the warning, that if I didn't step back and trust him in the provision and stop striving under performance to make it happen, that that things wouldn't be as good as they could be in all of his plans that he has, and all the glory for him. And so I am so thankful that end of September in 2017, I finally stopped working totally. I stopped working and I started trusting God, and my husband and I started trusting God for provision at Valor. And I know that he wants to provide. And so as we've sought him, the Lord's given a plan to start off with fundraising. God, he's the owner of the cattle on 1,000 hills. There's nothing beyond God. The debt that we have, which is about $40,000, which at one time was $120,000, he could pay that down in a moment, And so it's not really about the money, but it is about the positioning of our hearts and being willing to humble ourselves before him and just do our part. And I've struggled to know what my part is. But he showed us this kickoff. He showed this to me, and I released it, and I feel like there's a blessing in this. And so I want to ask you to partner. I want to ask you to please help in providing for Valor in 2018, believing for God through all of us and our efforts as we humble ourselves and we seek the help of the body, because that's what he's asking us to do, that he would meet